Welcome to Fast Forward on Finances, where Greg and I bring you useful information on financial matters that affect your life.
In this segment, we're looking at the topic of wills and powers of attorney. We'll be hearing from a number of experts about estate planning.
They all agree that having some important documents prepared can contribute a lot to the peace of mind of both you and your heirs. There are specific documents that everyone needs to have.
Well, there are three documents that really are crucial to everyone's estate plan, and those are the two powers of attorney, the medical power of attorney and financial power of attorney, and then either a will or a living trust. And then you're covered, both if there was an incapacity as well as, it deals with what would happen at your death. You need to make sure that you have your estate plan prepared, and that includes doing something like a will or a living trust and having powers of attorney that deal with incapacity. Then making sure that your heirs know where you keep these documents and you have information about what assets you own, so that if something were to happen to you, they're going to have everything in one place and know where that one place is.
This was helpful information. Too many people don't realize that there's an important distinction between a medical power of attorney and a financial power of attorney. A medical power of attorney goes by a number of names. It's called a healthcare proxy and advance directive.
The person you name has sole decision-making powers about any medical procedures you have. So it's important that you choose someone who knows what decisions you'd make if you couldn't.
Absolutely. Accepting the role of medical power of attorney is a serious responsibility. That's why it's common for married couples to designate a spouse.
True, but it's a good idea to also name a second person whom you trust in case your spouse is also incapacitated.
The other document, the financial power of attorney, is also called a durable power of attorney. It's a very important document for you and your family if you can't make financial decisions yourself. Without it, a court decides who can make the decisions, and that can get complicated and expensive.
The person you give legal authority to act on your behalf is called your agent, or in some states, your attorney in fact.
You don't make decisions like this without talking to your family. Listen to the views of our experts.
But it really is important, to have this communication prior to an emergency, prior to a crisis, so that there's a little bit more planning, there's a little bit more thoughtfulness, there's a little bit more understanding about what the next steps are when something unexpected occurs.
Your goal is to make sure that your assets that you have are passed as efficiently as possible. But more importantly than that is you want to also pass on the values that you have to your family, your children, your grandchildren.
Let's hear some final thoughts on estate planning.
Estate planning really means two things. One, it's taking care of yourself while you're alive if you were to become incapacitated, making sure your affairs are in order and that the right people can step in and handle your affairs when you're no longer able to handle them because of that incapacity. And then the second part of it is planning for death, making sure that your estate is set up so the right people receive your property, they receive it at the right time and with whatever restrictions might be appropriate.
If you're going to have a healthy relationship, which includes financial health, it's very important that both parties engage in the conversation about financial resources, how the money is to be managed, how it's to be left to heirs, and how it's to be utilized on a day-to-day basis.
Let's take a moment to hear the views of our knowledgeable experts.
Be sure that you have everything in order so that the stress involved with your passing can be reduced.
That's right, and estate planning is important. It's an important part of your retirement planning. But estate planning is not just planning for what happens when we die. It also has a living component, and that is planning for incapacity as well.
Absolutely. A living will is very important. It's also important that you let your loved ones know what you'd like at the end of life. Do you want cremation? Do you want to be on a ventilator? Those are very important topics, and it's better to talk about it now than to talk about it when you really need it.
Well, we've talked about it, and I hear living will, trust, that sort of thing. Can I do that? I mean, if I want a living will, can I write it myself? Can I get a trust form off of the web? I don't know what to do in order to even start the process. That's my problem.
And there is no legal requirement that you use an attorney to get these documents prepared. The problem that we see so often, though, is when you do it yourself, we don't find the problem until it's too late to fix it. You're now incapacitated, or worse, you're gone. So it is very important to get help when you're planning these very important legal documents.
What is the legal requirement?
Well, just as you're going to your CPA for tax advice or your financial advisor for financial advice, you should go to someone who specializes in estate planning, which is typically an estate planning attorney, to have your estate plan drafted.
I think it's also important to have some type of document that shows, call it a financial inventory, where all your files are at home, who the main contact is at the insurance company, or who is your attorney, or who is your CPA. Because quite often, our family members don't know what we are doing with our personal finances.
You're right.
To have a list or an inventory of our credit cards, our insurance policies, where our lockbox key is, and the like, can pay dividends.
You're right.
For
The
our heirs.
last thing that a family needs is that struggle of not knowing those things at your end of life.
So then what you said, Gail, let people know. It sounds like this is something that there's some conversation that should go on here before it ever comes up. I should talk to the family and discuss these things. And
It's a tough topic,
Yeah.
but it's one that's critical. It is critical.
And you may not be able to talk about it when you want to. It may take some time, in other words. It may take a couple conversations before you actually are able to talk about it with your family member.
Might even take a third party to be there to
Absolutely.
help facilitate the conversation.
Whether you're talking about estate planning, living wills, trust, wills, financial inventories, the important thing is that we have to take care of our heirs and let them know what our wishes are, let them know what documents we have in place and who the major players are in our overall financial plan.
We've heard some valuable information on this complicated subject. That's all our time for this segment of Fast Forward on Finances. We'll see you next time.